They're actually growing as a business, revenue, top line revenue wise, but they're still competing on price. That's a really huge indicator that there's a lack of real strategy, effective strategy. And then the second piece is that the customer journey is kind of broken.
The Business Owner's Journey. I'm Nick Berry, and I've got real business owners telling their real stories, sharing their real lessons and strategies so you don't have to figure it all out on your own. John Jantsch is the founder of the Duct Tape Marketing Agency. He's the guy who created the duct tape marketing methodology, which is like simple, practical, systematic approach to marketing strategy for small businesses. He's probably the first voice that most of us heard saying marketing is a system. Like that's how he got my attention. And this has been more than 10 years ago. He's one of the pioneers and authorities now on the fractional CMO trend. His agency, Duct Tape Marketing, they offer this fractional CMO agency system. They also have their agency certification, which one of my companies, Entrepreneur's Edge, we've been through that. It was a couple of years ago. So I've seen firsthand the value of their system and their education. John's written several books: Duct Tape Marketing, The Referral Engine, The Self-Reliant Entrepreneur, The Ultimate Marketing Engine. All are valuable reads. John and I had a great conversation. I really like talking to him. I think he's willing to keep it pretty real on things, which you can see. You'll hear it in the interview. You've also been doing this for a while. Like you've built your own business, and you were doing it before everybody was trying to do it. So if you don't mind, like tell us how duct tape marketing got to where it is, and some of the maybe the milestones that made you think about things the way that you do and made DTM what it is.
Sure. So I started, I don't know the exact date, but it's coming up on 30 years. I started my own agency. And, frankly, I went to work right out of college, actually, for an agency. Did that for about 5 years and just thought, I like doing my own thing. Anybody can run a business, right? And so I just jumped out. And frankly, I knew I could hustle work. I was good at that. And so that's what I did. No real plan. I got big clients, little clients, big projects, little projects. At some point after a few years, I realized I really loved working with smaller, mid-sized businesses, but they were pretty frustrating. They had the same needs and challenges, had never the same budgets, of course, or even attention spans. And so the kind of the traditional way that I had learned to do marketing just wasn't really working. So I just said, look, I'm going to try something totally different. I'm going to walk into a business and say, instead of saying, what do you want? I'm going to say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here are the results we hope to get. And here's what it costs. Do you want it or not? And after the third person said, yes, where have you been all my life? I thought, well, maybe I'm onto something here. And I think what I did was, in trying to solve my frustration, I tapped into what is still today, maybe increasingly, one of the greatest frustrations with for small businesses. It's very hard and getting harder to buy marketing services. Everybody's selling a piece of the puzzle, this newfangled thing, of the week. And so the fact that somebody said, look, we're going to install a system. We're going to start with strategy before tactics. And you're going to know what it is going to cost you. I think that was, again, music to their ears. So I built my agency completely that way and said, look, I think that I can take this out to the world and build a course type of approach or a methodology or framework. I started writing about it online. I did make the decision that it needed a name. It needed a product brand kind of name, and that's actually where duct tape marketing came from. Was really, that was the name of my system, if you will, or my first product that I sold. And people loved it so much that I was like, maybe I'll call everything that. So it became the name of my first book and, ultimately my business, my podcast as well. And it really, it's interesting. I mean, as you know, we now have, several, I'd say we're over 400 agencies that have licensed this methodology now, because I think a lot of people get that. It's like, yeah, this is the way we have to work today. Selling tactics alone is kind of a race to the bottom. And so, I think a lot of people, see what we have done, but also evolved and worked on. I mean, obviously I started my business before the internet, right? So it has evolved, and what we do now today, is in a lot of ways fundamentally has not changed, because I think what we do as marketers, really hasn't changed. It's just a new set of tools and buyers have, whole new ways to buy, and we just have to really focus on that. But
Hmm.
it's been gratifying that approach still today is somewhat innovative and still garners a lot of attraction.
Yeah. And it's just a different type of noise that you're having to cut through, right?
Yeah,
I remember duct tape marketing was in kind of that first group. There were like three books that I read early on that were like, aha. And the E-Myth was one, duct
yeah,
tape marketing was one, and there was one about like the Subway story or something. I don't know about that. But the referral engine is one that got my attention, that I was like, okay, this guy thinks kind of like I do. Right. And then, so, I think the appeal to me from that I found in your information was that there was a systematic approach to it, and
yeah,
you're probably not the only person to say that marketing is a system, but you're the one that I've heard say that from the beginning, and like still like that. That's who I think of. You probably are known as the duct tape marketing guy, and I think of
yeah.
you as like marketing as a system guy, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's funny. I tell that story that it was kind of a light bulb moment for me. I was speaking to probably a local chamber group or something, and said that marketing is a system. In fact, it's the most important system in your business. And I could just see everybody's like mouths open, like, why hasn't anybody ever told us that before? And that to me was like, oh. I'm onto something. I'm going to keep repeating that idea because I think it really did tap into. You mentioned the E-Myth. The E-Myth was all about systems. Frankly, the weakest part of anything to do with the E-Myth was marketing, because I think
Mm.
many people had really struggled to try to make marketing not just a system, but something practical, and not textbook, and not something that would be in in a college course. And I think that was really the challenge that I saw as the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. So the practicality of DTM has been something that since we like put Entrepreneur's Edge through the agency, through the certification, like that was the big appeal, was the practicality, and it's been a huge help to us. So what about like looking forward with duct tape marketing? What do you see ahead for you guys? I mean, I know
Well,
I've seen Sarah has taken
yeah.
on a more prominent role, or at
Oh yeah.
least from my
Yeah.
exposure. So I'm assuming you guys have a plan in mind.
Yeah, we're going to replace me with AI. Basically, is what we're going to do. Um,
Wow. Okay.
you know, I
I didn't
I
think it was going to get you. I thought it would get somebody. I didn't think it would get you.
yes, no, Sarah's definitely Sarah is been with me. Sarah Nay, our head of operations, has been with me for 15 years. She's also one of my daughters, so I guess I should say she's been with me her whole life. But she's definitely taken a more prominent role and has really grown into it. Does an amazing job. We have as an organization. I know you've seen us kind of lean a little more into the fractional CMO positioning, because I really think that whole fractional everything, of course, is very acceptable now. But also, I think a lot of organizations, I've never in my 30 years of doing this, never seen more people come to me saying, we need strategy. Before I had to like tell them what it was and why they needed it. And I think that there's just a real shift in what people are starting to understand about marketing. I think particularly as hard as it's gotten, as complicated as it's gotten, I think a lot of people are really kind of waking up to that idea that it's got to start with strategy. If you want to uncomplicate it, it's got to start with strategy first. So,
Mm-hmm.
and frankly, and I'm sure you see this in your business. I mean, digital agencies today, marketing consultants today are just hammered with everybody under the sun, trying to sell them some sort of course or program, or I mentioned AI already, powered system, to build their digital agency. And I think that a lot of people are just getting tired of that.
I
Yeah,
think it goes, you mentioned the tactical race to the bottom,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think kind of the thing that's evolving, so they're coming to you and they're saying, I need strategy. And they probably always thought they needed something. But now they know the word for that is strategy,
I think that's
because
right.
I
Yeah,
know what we went through and what all the businesses that we worked with have gone through over time. The vast majority are now have come to a place where they're like, I'll want people who will think, not just who will do.
Yeah.
And that's where the strategies come into place. Like they need to know like how to think about where we're going and how we're going to get there, not just somebody who's going to come in and comply with
Yeah.
an instruction sheet.
Yeah, or I mean, obviously, a lot of agencies have made a living selling a package of tactics that they niche down to a specific industry, and so if you're a dentist or a chiropractor, you're getting about 10 of those pitches a day of
Mm-hmm.
people just saying, "We'll put 40 people on your calendar tomorrow," and I think people just realize that that's just nonsense, and that's not how you build for long term, anyway. And so I think the idea of building a brand strategy, a marketing strategy that is really going to allow us to charge a premium, not only attract the right clients, but charge a premium, is obviously it's very appealing, but it's also a long term play. It's a invest in your business, for marketing play as opposed to treat it like a slot machine.
What's going on with this movement towards fractional, well,
Yeah,
fractional everything, but fractional CMOs? Like, what do we need to look for? How do we know what's what? How do we know what we
yeah,
need? How do we know when? How do we know how
yeah,
much? All
yeah.
the things.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing, and I've said this about anybody that you hire, I mean, is obviously they are not only talking strategy, but they demonstrate that they have a framework to apply. A lot of the mistakes I think I see anybody who hires somebody, they just go out and they say, "Oh, you've been a CMO for XYZ company, come on down and." Tell me what you're going to do for us. And I think that, what happens is they just get a lot of maybe they get a lot of interesting things in the beginning, but nothing really happens from that. And so the idea that somebody can walk in and say, "Look, here's what we're going to do first. Here's what we're going to do next. Here's how we're going to align with with your overall business objectives." If they're not coming to you with a plan, and I know some people are like, "Oh, but I want something customized." That's great, but if you don't have a framework and a structure that you're going to customize around, you're going to end up spinning your wheels a lot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of business owners, I'll talk to and say, "Oh, you need strategy," and they're like, "Oh no, we did that before." We we got in a room with
Check that
with a
box.
whiteboard and some
Yeah,
sticky notes, and
that's it
I
on the
don't
shelf
really
over
ever,
there.
yeah. I mean, I don't really know what became of all that, but we did that already. And so showing somebody what strategy. I mean, we spend a lot of time teaching people what strategy actually is and what it's not. There's a lot of confusion. Google doesn't help. If you Google marketing strategy, you're going to find a list of a whole bunch of marketing tactics, from them. So really, understanding what it is and why it is so important is half the job, I think, as we attract clients and teach them what it actually is and what it can do for them.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So if I'm listening, I'm a small business or any size business.
Uh-huh.
How do I know when it's time for me? How do I start the
Sure,
search?
you bet. So there's anybody who started a business. I mean, at first you're just like traction, proof of concept. Can I get anybody to actually pay me? Right. I mean, so those are a lot of times you're just flailing around, just trying to figure out what works. And then, you've been in business maybe 3 years, you start getting, even getting north of $1 million. Anybody who's listening, once you cross that magical number, you're thinking this is awesome, but then also some new problems started creeping up. And, maybe you got to that point because the founder or you were, pretty good at selling. And so as you start adding people, you're going to start adding complexities. And, a lot of people, will then just start throwing darts at like, "Oh, well, we're supposed to be on TikTok and we're supposed to be doing this." And so things kind of get out of control. You're wasting money on things. You still may actually have some progress. So now maybe you're at 3 million. Well, now it's time to really. I kind of talk about the fractional CMO really fits in the $3 to $30 million business. Obviously, there's a lot of range in there, but there's also a lot of complexities and differences in businesses. But that's the point where if you just take the kind of traditional 5 to 8% of your revenue should be invested in marketing, that's the point where you can start to afford somebody who is going to be a higher level, kind of senior marketing person, but on a fraction of the cost. So maybe a fourth of what you might pay for somebody sitting in that seat. You get to $30 million, and you should probably have a marketing department at that point, and it should
Mm-hmm.
be run by a fractional CMO or a CMO, in general. So all along that very large, spectrum, I believe that there's room for a fractional CMO. Now, what a fractional CMO does for a $30 million business as opposed to a $3 million business probably varies greatly. The lower end of that spectrum, you really just need somebody who's got expertise to help you understand what a marketing system looks like. Maybe they have a bench of people that they can bring to bear, if you don't have any folks. I often use the word orchestrate because I think that that's a piece that's also very important for a fractional CMO, especially working with that smaller business. They're not really there to just come in and say, here's what I see, here's your plan, good luck. They really are there to actually make sure that the plan gets executed, to actually hold the business owner accountable, be an advocate for marketing, be an advocate for the customer. And that involves, a lot of the orchestration, whether they're doing it or outsourcing it, to strategic partners. Having that single point of contact that's really running it all is probably, especially for a smaller business, is probably the biggest benefit of hiring somebody that thinks like a fractional CMO. They don't have to really. There are things that a CMO would do in terms of being a part of the C-suite and being access to the P&L and some things that on a larger business, but a smaller business would benefit from somebody who thinks like a fractional CMO, even if they don't call themselves that.
What kind of like predictive symptoms might they be picking up that it's like, if you heard them and you were in their ear, you could tell them like, hey, these are the signs.
Yeah,
like it's time you may need to look for somebody like this.
Well, one of my favorites is they're actually growing as a business, top line revenue wise, but they're still competing on price. That's a really huge indicator that there's a lack of real strategy, effective strategy. And then the second piece is that the customer journey is kind of broken. They view it as like, oh, our job is to get a customer, as opposed to, no, our job is to actually see what we could do more with our existing customer. Our job is to turn our customers into advocates. So there's that whole what happens after the sale part that a lot of businesses don't actually even view as marketing, that I think is really a key role for that fractional CMO. You may have a sales director and a head of service or something like that. But the fractional CMO is actually, I think, can play a great role in integrating and tying all of those together so that the customer gets to go on the journey they want to go on.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes these interviews, it's like I get a fresh gut punch. I just remember times where I was like, I just want to outsource the entire department.
And I think that that's really why, if you can find that right person that you can trust, that has the right point of view, that's, I think, every business owner, right? It's unfortunate, but about 2% of all businesses out there are started by people that have much experience or knowledge of marketing. And so, they know how to swing a hammer, they know how to do taxes, but this marketing thing is very foreign, and yet it's crucial. And so a lot of times, they get involved, up to their neck in it, but it's like anything that you don't really enjoy doing, you're probably not going to do well.
Yeah. It's like we knew how to do a thing. And that thing was usually not the marketing. You're a data guy, right? Like this is not guesswork for you.
That's another thing, obviously, that a fractional CMO should bring to you. You asked me a while ago about like, what should you be looking for? Somebody who is very interested in tying marketing to business outcomes, and looking at things like cost to acquire a customer and lifetime value of a customer. If they're not asking you, you might not know the answers to those, but if initially they're not asking you to start finding ways to look for those, then you probably are talking to the wrong person. A lot of marketers want to report, here's your keyword rankings and here's your, traffic to your website. And those are, underlying symptoms of growth. But they really are not, you're not tying, what you're doing or what you're spending, heaven forbid, to an outcome. And that's to me is one of the, the greatest things that a fractional CMO or anybody who thinks strategically about marketing is going to open your eyes to.
So what made me think about you and the data? And I've heard you say those things before several times. But you also shared a report recently that you did, you an active campaign, I think, And I think,
yeah, and data box, yes. Uh-huh.
okay, yeah. And so talk a little bit more about that, because what I took from it was this, it's what got me thinking again about people want, like, we're looking for to bring on board people who can think
Yeah,
and do strategy, not just do things,
that's right.
right? Like
Yeah.
this, there's data behind this movement.
Yeah. So we surveyed a couple hundred fractional CMOs and their clients. And one of the questions we asked their clients was, what do you attribute as the biggest benefit to working with a fractional CMO? And frankly, I thought it was going to be cost. It was cheaper, right, to work with a fractional CMO than to hire one, and cost was on the list. I think it was about third. Number one was we needed to think more strategically. That was absolutely the number one by far, 2-1 over the second answer. And so I think what a lot of businesses that grow to a certain level of success, they actually don't hire a senior marketing person because they don't really know what to tell them to do or what they actually should be doing, right?
That was
and
me.
so consequently, they don't do it, and that part of their business suffers. And so I think part of the attraction of the fractional CMO is far less risky. In a lot of ways, it's still seen as, it's somebody you hope turns into a trusted advisor, but if it doesn't work out, next, move on, move on to the next one. So I think that marrying of the fact that people are realizing they need to be more strategic, and here's an option that seems pretty desirable. I think that's what's really grown to the massive, over 60% growth in fractional CMOs in the last 5 years. And I think a lot of it, a lot of factors have come together. COVID, certainly sped it up. The fact that a lot of people are jumping out doing their own thing, fractional everything. This idea to, we need to be more strategic. I think all of those things have aligned to really make this role probably the fastest growing role in marketing today. And let's face it, you said tactics are a race to the bottom. It's Tactics are still important, but if you're an agency out there selling tactics, then you're competing with the person that's designing $150 WordPress sites, and that's where that's the race to the bottom, because it's just going to get cheaper and cheaper, and we can argue whether or not any of those sites are any good, or if AI is actually going to effectively be able to do some of the things that people are promising it can do. But the fact is, that's who you're competing with now. And so, by adding this strategy first, type of approach, you really find a way to differentiate yourself. And I think that's why a lot of agencies have been attracted to our approach. Is you could still actually do and recommend the same set of tactics. All of a sudden, you're just not competing on price for them anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it seems like there's also an opportunity where if so strategy. Delivering strategy may not be for everybody.
That's right.
If you are a tactical person, if that is your thing, if you want to build the websites, like that's all fine. There's a place for that, like you're saying. But it seems like there's an opportunity for these providers to cluster together.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's at least some are, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and anybody who's going to put themselves out there as a fractional CMO, better be building a team of best of class providers, because you're, as I said, in most instances, people are going to say, "This is amazing. Who's going to do it?" So part of your service needs to be, I can connect you, or I can manage these people, or I can manage your team, or I can help you build a team. Those are all things that need to be considerations.
Yeah, like I said, the thing that went through my mind from the beginning was, I want to outsource the whole department.
Right.
Does anybody say that? Do people come to you and say, I want you to take it all?
Yeah. There's a fine line between delegation and abdication, but there's no question that that's what they want.
All right. Was there anything else from the study in particular that you wanted to mention?
Well, so going back to the fractional CMOs, we asked them the same question. What do you associate as the biggest benefit to your agency, to now offer fractional CMO services? And of course, number one there, no surprise, was it makes us more strategic, right? But number two, I was so happy to see because it validated what I have known and experienced for many, many years, is it makes us, we create better relationships with our clients. So in other words, by coming in, doing strategy in the front end, you actually develop a trusted advisor, kind of relationship, as opposed to a vendor who gets hired to do, XYZ tactics. You've been through our process. I mean, we get so deep into a customer's business during strategy first that we're able to actually share with them, things that they don't even understand about their business, and you immediately elevate, your role, in that relationship, because you now. In most cases, you're now not just saying, "Oh, we need to do this, this, and this." It's like, no, we need to execute the plan to go here, and now they let you be in charge of it. There are people that have been selling $2,000-$3,000 kind of implementation packages, on the, that's what you can buy. That they'll actually run people through strategy first, sell that exact same package, but now for $5,000. It doesn't mean it was any more or less relevant. It's just positioned so completely differently because of the strategy engagement.
What's the starting point with you? Where do we want to point people to?
Well, I tell you what, we have created a choose your own adventure page. And so if you go to dtm.world, so DTM is in duct tape marketing, .world/growth, you'll find a page there that if you're a business owner and you're like, I need to find out how to get one of these fractional CMOs, we've got resources for you there. If you are an agency consultant, current fractional CMO, and you've realized I need a repeatable framework and system, we've got lots of tools for you there. You just pick your path, and you'll be able to find pretty much anything you want.
Nice. Are you going to write any more books?
I don't think so, actually, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'll write some fiction.
Okay.
A marketing consultant murder mystery. How's that sound?
I don't know. That could be well, I don't know. It might be a little too close to home. But you got to express your creative side. You can't just be all systems all the time, right?
That's right.
What? So just some maybe a little bit lighter questions, like what kind of? So I know you're a tech guy. I know you got into AI because when it got hot, that's when we were going through the certification, and you were digging into AI. What kind of like resources or tools, like you got any of your favorites, things you can't live without?
Huh.
Or what are you having the most fun with right now?
Well, I take, just as, when the web came along, and then when social media came along, and, all these new tools come along, I do really love, I think that's what's allowed us to stay relevant for many years, is that I do really love the new stuff. And so, but I take a decidedly different view. A lot of people get out there and it's like, oh, we need first mover advantage so we can hype it and, get ahead of things. I mean, the world's littered with hundreds of thousands of social media marketing agencies, right? That, people realized, oh, it's just marketing. So for us, any tool or any new platform that I look at, my question is always, what's the practical use for this that's going to allow me to serve my clients better than I do today? So with that filter, I think you can go into pretty much any new tool and say, yeah, this is one we ought to focus on, or no, this is one we shouldn't. Things like Clubhouse. Remember Clubhouse?
Yeah,
that was
for a minute.
I mean, I looked at that and I was like, I apply that filter to it. Nope, I'm going to pass. It doesn't seem to
We're
really
all
make
still
sense.
complaining about how we used to do teleconferences, right?
Yeah, that's right. So as far as AI goes, there are amazing practical efficiencies to using that as a tool that is going to allow us to do things faster, is going to allow us to actually add more value. I mean, we're able to actually give clients, really for the same amount of time, we're able to actually give them more deliverables. However, what I actually see it doing is making people like you and I who think strategically actually more important, because what we're seeing right now is just a glut of people, putting out garbage because, hey, it's easy. It's easy to do, right? It's like email. It's free to send email, right? Well, it's, really easy to write 500-word blog posts with AI. But they're not going to serve anybody. They're not going to be useful. In fact, at some point, search engines and people are going to, really start tuning them out. one thing people don't talk enough about when it comes to AI is a lot of marketers talk about, oh, it can let me do this and I can create this 50-page ebook in 10 seconds. Well, what we don't realize is that consumers of content are now using these tools every bit as much as we are, meaning they take that 50-page ebook and say, give me the 5 salient points, from this ebook. And so all of a sudden, we're rushing to create all this amazing content, or what we see as amazing volume of content. And the consumer is just basically saying, nope, I'm going to use these tools to get what I need out of it. And so, that lesson really ought to inform how somebody is employing any tool, but certainly AI. And that's why, again, I believe strategists will be more important than ever.
Yeah. Anybody, if you can have an independent thought or a perspective or an opinion, because if you're not careful, if you have AI create your 50-page ebook, it may not have 5 salient points.
Yeah, that's right.
It can't come up with unique insight. What about outside of AI? Anything that you use that helps you do your thing better?
I've had a podcast for years. I interview authors primarily, and I use a lot of tools to get kind of the quick and dirty on books. The same idea, so that I can, in some cases, assess whether or not this is a book that I really want to spend time on. I mean, I get publishers send me books every week, and there's no way for me to get through them. So I use a lot of the summary kind of tools. Same with news feeds. I really kind of design what I read and consume from a podcast standpoint, pretty selectively, so that it's, and sometimes you could be too selective and you start just, the echo chamber kind of a approach. But so I do also like to, in terms of my own personal reading, it's pretty eclectic. I've read several thousand business or marketing books, I suspect, at this point. And so now I really enjoy getting into books that are very off topic, because I actually find that in many cases, I don't know, architecture, like there's some concepts in architecture that apply so much to business but nobody's talking about them, in the context of business. And so I find those to be great places to find some kind of innovative ideas.
Yeah, I totally agree. Things like that help you think differently.
That's right.
And I mean, if it sharpens your mind, like, it's going to make you better at solving the complexity and the uncertainty and the madness that is figuring out your business.
Absolutely.
I think it makes you better at everything. Yeah. So who else right now in the world are you paying attention to, business-wise, entrepreneurship, marketing?
I am, and I've done this a couple times over my course of my career. There's a lot of people that, a lot of people associate, they've been around a long time. A lot of people associate with the kind of old school internet marketer hype. Folks, you think about the Frank Kerns, the Jay Abrahams, the Alex Hormozy now is one that's cropped up there, Ryan Dice. These guys have been around a long time. And it's really easy to dismiss them as, they all sell a ton of stuff. It's really easy to dismiss them as kind of the, hype machines. They've all got their like AI product, out there already. I learn a lot from paying attention to what they do. I don't mimic it or copy it, but there's a seed of truth in how they market. I dislike the way they market. I dislike the way that they prey on people's fears to get their money, and in many cases, unfortunately, don't really deliver what's promised. But there's a seed of truth in what they understand about the psychology of marketing, and so I never let those people. I'm always paying attention to what they're doing new.
Yeah, so it's interesting the way that you phrase that. I think I came up in that world too, and it can be very cringy, but if you shut it down, you're missing out on a lot to be learned. And what I'm always trying to figure out whenever I see what they do, it's like, I feel like they bottom feed a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like, what can I take from what they're doing and apply it and not bottom feed, right? How can you go after people without going after fears and,
They also, in a lot of cases, they've also invest a lot of money in advertising, and consequently, you don't hang around very long investing a lot of money in advertising if you're not testing and measuring and figuring out what works. And so, a lot of times, I mean, what works today will not work tomorrow, but a lot of times they are at the forefront of like what is working today. And so just paying attention to what they're doing in some cases, like I said, I don't mimic it. Some of it turns your stomach. But like I said, there's things to be learned, from the fact that they are testing so much.
Yeah. And they're communicating, they're talking to other people like them, they're in mastermind groups. Like that's how they stay out in front so fast.
Yeah.
And they're pretty protective of what they're doing that is working and what they're revealing that they're not doing.
Yeah.
Man, this is great. I really appreciate you doing it, and have a good afternoon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found the show valuable, you can say thanks and show your support simply by taking a quick second to like, share, and comment on the show. You can also find more information about each of my guests, all of the resources from the show, and myself at nickberry.info/TBOJ.